record on this computer. Okay, we're good. We're live. Hey there, folks. Thanks so much for listening in or watching if you're watching on YouTube. My name is Art Wright, and I'm the pastor at Williamsburg Baptist Church. And today I'm talking to Michael D. Jones. Michael, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well tonight.
Michael, thanks so much for joining me. This is a new series. This is, I guess, initially a bonus episode for our podcast listeners and YouTube subscribers, but we're going to call it Williamsburg Baptist Stories, or WBC Stories. The idea is that we want to, church is not necessarily a place. Ideally it is, but it's often not a place where we get to know people in deep ways. If you just show up on Sunday morning for an hour, we kind of run into each other in passing. We might talk for a little bit, but we don't really get to know the deep stories of one another's lives. And I think that the pandemic has amplified that. We might, we might see each other via YouTube or Zoom or whatever for just a little bit here and there, but we're struggling to get to know one another in deep ways. So we're going to be talking to Michael during the next hour about his life and his spiritual journey as a way to get to know him deeper. The hope is then that will give you, dear listener or dear viewer, permission to share your story with Michael sometime too, or share your story with me. And the second thought is that even as a church, we don't often or we might neglect sometimes to share testimony, so to speak. So one of the things that I'll be asking Michael to share tonight during this conversation is where he's seen God at work in his own life in a way that's honest. And we're not asking him to put on a facade, but just to be vulnerable and say, I've seen God working here, or, at times I've doubted God's presence, and that's okay. But Michael, we're so glad. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your, courage and vulnerability and being willing to
Absolutely.
share. I wonder if you can just introduce yourself for a couple minutes, tell us who you are. Some folks who are listening or watching probably have never met you, and maybe just sort of sketch your life journey for just a little bit for us.
Okay, well, the basic outline is my name is Michael Jones. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, February 1973. I am a direct product of the Vietnam War.
Oh,
My mom was in nursing school at Norfolk General, and my father was a Marine serving in Vietnam.
hmm.
Uh, my mother's best friend was my mother's roommate at nursing school was my father. And my mom read an article about the soldiers over there being disillusioned and just downhearted because nobody was writing to them. And my mom knew that her friend had her friend over there, and actually she knew a lot of guys over in Vietnam. And my mom kept nagging her, write your friend, write your friend, write your friend. And so her friend said, fine, I have all these guys that I write with. Take a look at them and see which one you want to pick. My mom saw my dad's picture, said, he's cute, let me write him. So my mom started writing my dad, and that's how they met. So this was old school online dating before there was online. So
What
that's
an-
how they met. Um,
That's an amazing story.
it's my sister and I are thinking about writing a book about their love stories. We have the letters and we have
Wow.
we've got pictures. So yeah, I come from a lot of love. Definitely, we grew up in a Christian household.
Hmm.
I became born again when I was 7 years old, when I understood the difference between right and wrong. I then got baptized when I was 13. Grew up in a Baptist church. We started out at a Free Will Baptist church in Virginia Beach. Then we moved to an independent fundamentalist when I was in later elementary school through high school, and then college. And this is where the journey gets really interesting.
Yeah,
um,
buckle up.
Buckle up, people. It's going to be a bumpy night here. I'll tell you that. Um, I came out as a gay man when I was a senior in college. Um, Basically, I had to, and there's a whole nother discussion about that. But basically, before I came out, I prayed.
Hmm.
Um, I had been praying my whole life because I knew I was different. I
Hmm.
always knew I was different. I didn't understand what it was. And even once I figured out what it was, I would thought, well, that can't be what it is because
Hmm.
I'm a Christian. I can't be gay. It's got to be something else because that's a choice and that's evil. It's got to be something else. But then I started to actually meet people in college, and they weren't evil. They were just regular, ordinary people.
Hmm.
And I prayed about it, and I prayed about it, and I prayed about it. And finally, the day it was just too much to bear. So I was training to be a peer advisor at college. I attended George Mason University in Northern Virginia, and I went off by myself during a break, and I sat down on a picnic table all by myself, and I looked up and I prayed and I said, Lord, I've been praying to you for years to get rid of this, but
Hmm.
it's clear to me that this is not your plan. So this is who I am. I just ask that you just stay with me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to abandon you, so you don't abandon me.
Hmm.
I just ask that you just keep doing what you've always done. Let me know when I've done the right thing. Let me know if I've done the wrong thing. But we're going to do this. And I just
Hmm.
ask that you just stay with me. And so I did. I came out
Wow.
and started telling everybody. And to my surprise, nobody was surprised. I was the last one to really know about it. I told all my friends, they're like, oh, yeah, we knew. We've
Wow.
known. We were having conversations about it in high school.
Right.
Yeah. So
Thanks.
I
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, but basically, I had to re-examine my entire faith. All of a sudden, everything I knew about my faith or what I thought I knew got turned completely upside down. And I had to figure out, okay, now that I have this information, what do I do with it?
Hmm.
And I've said before that being a gay Christian is a very difficult thing to be.
Hmm.
It is not an easy task. Because, like I've said before, talking to you and other people, you're either too gay for the Christians,
Hmm.
but then you're too Christian for the gays. And they're basically, it seemed for the longest time, at least 25 odd years ago, it felt like the camps were completely separated. And it's like society made you pick. You can either be you either be gay or you can be totally Christian over
Right.
here. And I'm looking at both, and I don't fit in with this crowd and I don't fit in with that crowd. I want to fit in with this crowd, but I want to fit in with this crowd. And I don't know which one to go to because in many cases, the worlds are completely different. As I've
Indeed.
said, on the gay side of things, there were things that I've seen and experienced, not that I pursue any of these things, but just you happen to be in a place, as I said. My second year being out of the closet, I attended we might want to edit this out later, but it might be a good story.
Okay. You can. It's up to
Um,
you.
no, let's tell the story. Like I went to a gay church service in Washington D.C. on Easter Sunday, and there are drag queens in full-on Sunday garb with the hats and the handbags, looking flawless, and then you had men in leather
Mhm.
harnesses and leather jackets and pants with the chains around their neck, going to church as well. Nowadays, I would be like, that's awesome. At least you're in church. God bless you. But back then, I'm like, this is so inappropriate. So I've seen things that most people, when they go to church, they don't have to see this. They don't see these things. So I'm a little more worldly than most Christians, but I'm also very naive and very
Hmm.
timid. Like, I don't want to do these. I can't do these things. And, what
Mhm.
is this for? And
Right.
it's a very fine line to walk, and it's a hard one to walk
Mhm.
because sometimes you want to fully embrace one, but it sounds like if you want to fully embrace one, you would have to reject the other.
Hmm.
um but I decided, no, there's got to be a way to meld both of them together.
Mhm.
And I found on my journey, because as I was discovering who I was and rediscovering who I was, and I went through different periods where I identified with certain people more than others. I started reading books by Mel White called Stranger at the Gate,
Mm.
Becoming a Man by Paul Monet, um, just books by David Sedaris,
Mhm.
just discovering this history, all this rich history of people that had been, had gone on before us, and had I realized that I was part of a culture that I wasn't aware I was a part of this culture. Uh, like this is why I listened to certain music, why I was gravitated to certain movies, or my thinking about things was the way it was, because that's just the way I was programmed. Um, but also it made me like I always felt like I wasn't Christian enough.
Hmm.
You know, like I love Jesus and I love God, and like I have no trouble singing gospel, like singing hymns, and Victory in Jesus, for instance, is my favorite hymn, and
Oh, nice.
I love it. I sing it, but I'm not going to buy an album of other artists singing Christian music. I don't, it just doesn't resonate with me for some reason.
Hmm.
Now Mahalia Jackson or someone like that, where you actually feel it, I can totally relate to that. And I feel like I'm going completely off tangent. Just follow me.
You're doing great so far.
Okay. But it's been an interesting journey, and I feel my faith is stronger,
Hmm.
because I've had to fight to keep it.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
I've had to constantly, you know how like nowadays you have people that, you know, like your friends on Facebook, but you may only chat with them like maybe once a year, and
Hmm.
you're good. Like I just check in with you once in a while, or getting the once a year Christmas card with the family photos and the update. That's good enough
Right.
for me and God. It's not.
Hmm.
It's never been that way, because since I came out, I've had people telling me that he hated me,
Hmm.
that I was going to go to hell,
Yeah.
and that basically I didn't deserve God's love.
Right.
And my answer to that was, well, nobody deserves it. That's why he died for us. Nobody deserves it. And second, I'm like, nobody made you God. And frankly, I've had a relationship with God long before I knew he hated me.
Hmm.
So I, I've had that connection with him since I was 7 years old, and I've always prayed. And even though my form of prayer has modified over time, I don't do the traditional formal get down on your hands and knees by the bed and fold your hands and close your eyes. Um, I pray throughout the day. I'll just utter a phrase here, or like, oh, I'm thinking about this person. God bless this person. Oh, I just found this person. Their father died. Just bless them and just help them deal with the pain. I pray throughout the day, but I don't have the luxury of sitting back and only checking in with God once a year.
Hmm.
I have to constantly stay diligent and make sure that he and I are okay, because I've had so many people, society, you see it in the signs, like God doesn't love you. So
On the
I'm having to be
billboards.
like, okay,
Yeah.
making sure you and I are okay.
Yeah.
Because I myself have never had any indication that God hated me.
Yeah.
Never. Never.
I love that, part of your coming out story is this moment with you and God in conversation saying, I think this is the way it is, and I think I need to say it, but I need to check in with you first. I think that's such a beautiful, I can't imagine, how hard or challenging it might have been, but it is such a beautiful moment in retrospect to look back that
It's yeah, it's I realize that I'm one of the blessed. I'm one of the very few people who have been blessed from it. I've known so many people who where their churches turned their backs on
hmm,
them, and because they for some reason, a lot of people, for one reason or another, and I don't think they do it on purpose, a lot of people equate their how if their relationship with their church is strong, their faith in God is strong.
hmm,
But if something happens at the church level that shakes their faith, or causes them to be disillusioned with church leadership, then for some reason, a lot of times the relationship with God suffers.
hmm,
And I've seen a lot of people walk away, or just because they've been shunned by the church, they just walk away, and don't ever look back. And so then they do embrace will of God, and they figure, well, you know what? If I'm just going to go to hell anyway, it doesn't matter what I do, then I'm just going to live it up and just be whoever I want to be. And so they go completely jump into the gay side, or even with straight people, or, you know, if God hates me, I'm just going to go do whatever I want,
yeah,
you know? So, but that never felt right to me
hmm,
to do that, because like I said, I never felt that God hated me. I never allowed that thought to get into my mind. I never, ever allowed it.
You grew up in a fundamentalist or very conservative church. I'm wondering a couple things. One, did you hear, did they talk about gay or lesbian people within the church and, it's sinful? Or I'm also wondering, what do you think about growing up as a Christian in that context stuck? Because, someone did something right at the, if you get to college and you feel like you have this
Yeah.
tight relationship with God.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't remember hearing any sermons about that were anti-gay.
Okay.
I certainly heard about anti-drugs
Yeah.
and certainly anti-communism and the evils of that, and just sin in general. Um, but it helped that I had pretty progressive parents. You
Okay.
know, we were taught to question, just because the church says something doesn't mean that it's true. We watched the news, we read the newspaper. We were a very progressive family.
Hmm.
I was allowed to listen to whatever music I wanted to. My mom thought she had hit pay dirt with me because, yeah, I was listening to rock music and watching movies and all that, but I wasn't getting any girls pregnant.
There you
I
go.
wasn't doing drugs and I wasn't doing alcohol. So she thought she had found this perfect little boy.
Right.
Well, she did, but just with one tiny little difference.
Tiny little difference.
In fact, when she first found out that I was gay, she said, "Well, Michael, don't you know that you're going to go to hell?" I'm like, "Mom, you know better than that.
Hmm.
I learned from you that once you were in the hands of God, nothing that you could do could
Hmm.
take you out of God's hands. Once you're in the hands of God, you're in the hands of God,
Hmm.
and that's just it." So
Hmm.
I've always walked that, like, God's got me. Even if I feel I'm distant from God, it's not because God's distant, it's because I'm distant. I'm the one that's walked away. I'm the one that's turned my back a little bit. But no, he's always been there.
Yeah.
But there were two sermons that my minister gave, and I actually reached out to his wife a little while ago and told her to thank him, because while my faith had taken a beating for a while. It's actually stronger. I feel like it's stronger than it was when I was a kid.
Wow.
Um, I guess because, well, first of all, the two sermons. One was that he said that Christianity was a relationship, not a religion. That religion will send you to hell faster than anything.
Hmm.
And two, that your walk with God is just that. It's your walk.
Hmm.
So your calling the calling that God has for you is not going to be the same that calling has for somebody else. So the things that you're going to experience and the lessons that you're going to learn are not going to be the same things as somebody else, because what they have to do is different from you.
Hmm.
It's like going to college. You're on this track to if you're studying to be an engineer, you're not going to take the same classes as somebody who's studying to be an artist.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Same
So
with calling and
it's a
yeah.
completely different track. So the lessons are going to be different, the experiences are going to be different, the insights are going to be different, and the people that you meet are going to be different. And you have to stay open to that. So that's what, every time I had a doubt, I just remembered, what, this is just part of the journey and it's okay. And yeah, there were times that I would scream at God. I would get very angry with God. Oh, hello, kitty.
Feline visitor.
Feline visitor. Hello, Cosette.
Hey,
Daddy's
Cosette.
having a conversation right now. You can leave that in.
I would
People
love
love
to.
kitties,
Yeah,
yes.
totally.
um but like, if I had a great date and then he said, oh, by the way, but my ex-boyfriend wanted to get back together with me, and because I know him, I'm going to go back. And you give your heart and soul into things and you get really upset. And like, I remember one time I came back from one such incident and I said, okay, God, I love you. I love you and I respect you and I know that you have a plan and I know that this is for the best. But I also know that you're the person, only being who can see the whole picture of my life. And so you understand why this had to happen. So I'm going to give you that. But with that said, why in the world did you do this to me? Why? You know, and I felt better, but I never once felt that God got angry at me. I didn't
Yeah.
There were no lightning bolts coming down to strike me dead or anything. Um, but it has. I mean, it's taught me, this journey has taught me definitely to step out on faith,
Hmm.
because I've had to. I mean, coming out of the closet was a big faith step as it was. I mean, because I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't
It,
know
rem-
what's going to happen.
it reminds me of that moment in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where Indiana Jones he's in he's trying to get to the Holy Grail, but it looks like there's no bridge, and he literally
Oh,
has to take this step and trust that when he takes that step, he will land and not
I think of
fall.
that every time. Yes.
Yeah. Michael, you, I think more than anybody else, embody this sense. I'm so glad you mentioned it, that Christianity or faith is more about relationship than religion, because I feel like I can sense so powerfully that you have a one-on-one relationship with God and you live that. And I love how you mentioned you talk, to God or pray to God throughout the day. We were talking a little
I do.
bit before we hit the record button about, so many of us, I think, have this sense in life that there's one track that we're supposed to follow. Like, you grow up, you graduate high school, you go to college, especially if you're a quote unquote good Christian person. You get married, have kids, I don't know, become a deacon or whatever. And the reality is that life is so much more complicated and messy and beautiful all at the same time, because people get divorced, or people can't have kids, or college isn't the right fit, or loved one dies, or you're gay, or any number of things that just kind of explode this sense that there's this one right track that we're all on, and that we can step off the track and mess things up.
Yeah, there are times I wonder if I had just, because what intrigues me is that I feel like I'm back to the person that I was originally when I was
Mm,
14. Like, I'm
mm,
the one sitting here reading. I'm the one drawing or doing art. I'm the one listening to music, because that's kind of what I did.
yeah.
And then I felt I needed to be something else, but it's amazing that the journey is taking me on. I'm kind of back to that person that I was when I was 14. But it makes you, I mean, it does, it makes you wonder if you had just done what you were supposed to do from the very beginning, or if you had
Mm,
actually been more self-aware and more in tune with what God wanted you to do, which are not always the same thing.
mhm,
Uh, if your life would have been different. But
mm,
I also believe that, if I hadn't gone through, because there's so many times I look back and I wish I hadn't gone through this thing, or I wish I hadn't had to experience this. But then to get rid of that experience would undo everything that came after it. And my life has been a testament to me of how strangely miraculous God is, and a sick sense of humor in many ways. I
divine
mean,
humor
yes,
and irony.
divine humor, it's a real thing. Because be careful what you pray to God for, because you just might get it, and you may not be happy with it. But even in the most miserable of times, I found miracles
I
there.
I find myself thinking some about that during the pandemic, that, I never would have wished for this season of life. I don't think many people would have. I don't think for a second that God caused it, but I think that we might look back one day, and yes, acknowledge the pain and suffering and losses, but also acknowledge that God was at work in the midst of it, and, challenging us and strengthening. And I hope that we as individuals and as a society and as a church, arrive on the other side better for it.
Yeah. God has revealed himself to me in many different ways.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, through the pandemic, I realized just how much I value my alone time,
Uh-huh.
but also how much I treasure my friends.
Right.
It wasn't all good. I mean, my mother died during the pandemic, but a part of me, she had dementia, and there was a part
Oh,
of me that was thankful that she was now released from this, and I don't have to worry about her and all of this. I know she's safe and she's in a better place, and she's safe from everything. And I know she's in God's hands, and she's up there with my dad and her parents, and she's doing well. But yeah, I've there's been a lot of miracles that have come out of this time. And
Mm,
I've felt and experienced God over the course of my life whenever I needed, because if you look carefully, God is there. You just have to look. I mean, sometimes you're driving down the road and you're struggling with something emotionally, spiritually, and a song will come on the radio and it will
mm,
just be the answer to your question. Or you'll see a bumper sticker that will have the message that you're looking for, and that's the answer that you need. Um, I've actually seen God. I've seen God through the eyes of somebody else.
mm,
When my grandmother died in
mm.
1997, she had dementia, and when I got the phone call from my dad saying, "If you want to see your grandmother, come to the hospital now," well, she waited for the last cousin to get there,
Wow.
who flew in from Texas. And shortly, like an hour after the cousin got there, she opened up her eyes. She was in a coma, and she looked at all of us, and she was looking very sad. But we were all telling her, "It's okay to go. It's okay. We got this.
Mm,
Go, finish your journey." And then she looked up at the ceiling, up right above the television, and she got this wide-eyed look on her face and a smile. And I said, "Oh, she's looking at God." And at that
wow.
moment, she went.
Wow.
So I saw my grandmother see God, and that confirmed my faith. The whole fact that I moved from the DC area to Richmond
Mm,
back in 2000 was a calling from God. I was literally on the bus going from my apartment in Fairfax to the train station in Vienna to go to my job in downtown DC. At the time, I was dating Sean,
mhm.
uh, and we weren't sure who was going to move where. It made more sense for him to come to DC because that's where all the opportunity was. I mean, who knew from Richmond,
Right.
you know? But I'm on the bus, clear as day, and I hear this voice in the back of my head tell me, "I want you to go to Richmond."
Hmm.
Very
Wow.
clear, and this feeling of peace came over me, and I was like, "Okay." I went right when I got to work, I went right into my boss's office, and I told her, "When my lease is up in 3 months, I'm leaving to go to Richmond. So this is my 3-month notice."
Wow.
So, and it worked, and it put me
Mm,
on the path to the career that I have currently on.
mhm,
I It was good career-wise for me, and my mother was thrilled,
mhm.
especially because within a year 9/11 happened, and then
Oh, wow.
the sniper shootings.
I remember that.
So she was very happy to have me out of DC. And even since coming back to the Hampton Roads area, um, I got reconnected to my art. I got
Mhm.
reconnected to singing. Uh, I I had a job that was a horrible experience for me, but because of that job experience, I reconnected and basically discovered my love of painting,
Mhm.
which is part of my ministry in a way.
Yeah. I wanna ask you about that in just a
Okay.
second, but I really appreciated what you said about sort of this, cultivating an awareness of God in your life. I taught spirituality at the Baptist Seminary in Richmond for several years, and what I feel like I learned way more than my students did. Just I mean, it was such a great experience. But one thing I learned is that we are such a busy culture and sort of like a go 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 culture, and I think one of the biggest challenges of spirituality and nurturing faith in our lives is just slowing down and paying attention and recognizing that God is present in every moment. Like even this moment, we're connecting via Zoom, but I think there's a sense that we're, gathering on sacred ground. Or if, we're sitting out on my back patio, splitting a bottle of wine, or in the presence of friends, that God is present there too. And I don't probably, I feel like you, I'm not as good of a Christian as I should be, but when I do take that time to try to cultivate that awareness, I do feel like there's a sacred presence in the midst of our lives, and it's a shame when we don't slow down to notice it. So
It
I'm
is, yeah, because we don't take enough time for ourselves. And one thing I've learned from losing both of my parents in the last 2 years is that you do have to make time
Mhm.
to spend time with those that you love, and you do need to take time every once in a while just to drop a quick message, even if it's just for a moment, to say, "Hey, just let you know I'm thinking of you. I love you. Sorry I haven't been in touch, but let's keep in touch." Something. just
Yeah.
to let them know that you're thinking of you, which is kind of what I like. I don't take enough time to worship God like I should, and like I said, and there's so many places, there's so many things I also wanted to talk about is that, we talked about how your life should be so structured and you feel like you need to fit in. And I think for a lot of Christians, I know I felt we're taught to believe that the most spiritually uplifting experiences that you have in your life should be in a church.
Right.
Like you should come out of a church every single Sunday feeling uplifted and rejuvenated and ready to just, tackle the world and live and be on fire for God.
Right.
That was hardly ever my experience.
Well, and then
I
you
mean,
feel like a terrible Christian as a
I
result.
did. And so again, I felt I wasn't like, what was wrong with me?
Right.
But I feel more connected. I feel more of God's presence right now, talking
Mhm.
to you right now. I felt it on our Zoom calls in the morning. I
Mhm.
felt it around, if someone has a log in a fire pit and everybody's just kind of sitting around with a beer or a wine or cider or hot chocolate, and we're all just
Mhm.
talking and celebrating life and just enjoying each other's company. I feel the spirit of God there.
I do
And
too.
I feel it when I'm out by myself walking and I'm looking at the trees and I'm looking at the flowers and I'm listening to nature and I take time to breathe and collect myself and process on my thoughts, and I commune with God and I feel
Mhm.
very spiritually uplifted, not to mention artistically inspired by that, which
Right.
again is, I also find, is also a ministry. I mean, a lot of people feel that you have to be a minister of God, you have to actually be a minister or a deacon or a missionary.
Mhm.
And that is so not the case. Um, One of the most spiritually uplifting experiences I ever had in my life was I was working at a office building in DC, and we were building a new office in the Reagan building, and I went to get a taxi to bring the blueprints for the new office space over to the Reagan building. And I was having a really bad day,
Mm.
and I was halfway through there. I was halfway to the Reagan building, and I realized I left the blueprints on my desk. So I had to ask the cab driver to go back. I had to go upstairs and get the blueprints, and I came right back down and I got a new taxi cab. And I was in no talking mood. I was just really frustrated. But this taxi driver was talking to me about this was his 50th wedding anniversary, and he couldn't wait to take his wife out to dinner.
Mm.
And he was driving over there and he looked at me and said, "You know that God loves you, right?" I said, "Yes, I do know that." I said, "Yeah, and you know that whatever you're going through, God's got it, and He's going to get you through this."
Hmm.
And I said, "Yes, I do realize that." And as soon as I stepped out of the taxi cab, I looked up and I said, "Thank you for that." So, a
Wow.
minister of God, a man who was a taxi driver, ministered to me. I don't even know. I never saw that man again. For all I know, he was an angel. He may not have been a real person. I don't know.
Mhm.
But that man in that moment was a minister of God,
Mhm.
just being kind and showing God's love and letting another human being that he did not know that God loved him and reminded me that God loved me. So I would just say to everybody, don't feel like don't just think that just because you're not a minister that you can't do God's work.
Right.
God can use anybody, no matter how sinful you may be
I think I that's such a
or what.
beautiful comment. I think one of the challenges of, the church, and I don't mean our church in particular, but all churches, is we've sort of nurtured this sense that it's the people who have the education, have been to seminary and or are ordained like reverends who are, the people who do the work of the church, when it's really all of us. God is calling all of us to be the presence of Christ in the world. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
And we as Baptists really do believe in this sort of sense of the priesthood of all believers. It doesn't have to be me who offers communion to someone or says a prayer or sits at someone's bedside while they're sick. Or whatever.
Yeah.
So I,
My sense has always been that it is our responsibility as Christians to we're just supposed to be the ones showing the light to the path.
hmm,
We are the lights showing people the path to God. We are not God ourselves.
right.
We It is not our place to judge them and decide who gets to follow that path. No, because that's up to God. God
Right.
can use everybody, and it's just our job to love. And it's a struggle sometimes. In this day
Sure.
and age, it is very hard. But I've always felt that that was my belief. And it has to be genuine, because you have to do it from love. Because I remember as a kid, I was 4 or 5 years old and driving back from my grandparents' house, and there was this, he looked like one of those old white Southern ministers with the black trench coat and the black fedora, standing in the median on Little Creek Road and Chesapeake Boulevard in Norfolk in the rain, and he's holding his fist out with one hand, and he's got the Bible in the other one, and he's screaming at people about how they're sinful and they're evil and they're going to die and burn in hell unless they repent and accept Christ as their savior. And even as a 4 or 5 year old kid, I'm like, that's not very nice.
No.
What? No, I don't want to talk to that man. I don't want to go to his church.
Yeah.
And no one had ever taught me that, but I knew then that that's not the way to do it.
Mm-mm.
No,
Yeah.
no. And so many people get it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the church is not a place for perfect people. Just like
Definitely not.
a gym is not for people with perfect bodies, or
Right.
or a hospital isn't for the well, it's for the sick. I mean, you go.
Jesus said something very similar.
Yes.
I love that.
I mean,
Well,
and who did Jesus hang out with? It was the outcasts of his own society.
people, yeah, I mean, people, I mean, you can read it in the Gospels. People are like, Jesus, you're always drinking and feasting and hanging out with all the wrong sorts of people. And then they prattle off this list: sinners, prostitutes, tax collectors. That's who he was hanging out with. And I think that's such a beautiful word of inclusion, where Jesus is sort of trying to expand God's welcome in his own ministry.
Yeah, because it's sad that over the course of my lifetime, I have felt more Christian love
Hmm.
from non-believers,
Hmm.
atheists,
Yeah.
Wiccans, Buddhists. More, they truly, I feel, truly get the spirit of what Christ was trying to do. I felt more loving and accepting from them than I have from my fellow Christians, and
Mhm.
that's very sad.
Yeah.
That's very sad. Like I said, if it hadn't been for my faith, and my mother at one point she felt that she led me and my sister to Christ too young.
Oh.
She felt that we were too young to have done it. She wishes that she had waited a little longer. And I said, no, I'm glad that you did it when you did, because I don't know if I could become a Christian right now with what I see Christianity is today. This is because this is not the God that I was raised to know.
Hmm.
This is not the Christianity that I believe in. This is not what I was taught to believe in. So no, I'm very glad that you brought me to God when you did. So no, do not regret that.
She did something right.
She did
I
a lot
think that's
right. She did a
unbelievable.
lot right. Yes. And she had a crisis of faith. I mean, she had to re-examine her own faith. I mean, she
Yeah.
examined books, and she apologized to me. She goes, "I'm so sorry that I wish you had talked to me when you were a kid. I wish I had understood."
Over
I
over sexuality
Over
questions.
sexuality, because there's a lot of people that, because it's hard. I mean, reconciling your sexuality to your spirituality, you know,
Were
because
there I have so many questions I want to ask.
ask away.
Yeah. This is a 3-hour podcast, right?
We could do a whole series if you
That's
want.
right. It's just the Michael D. Jones
The
stories, not.
Michael D. Jones hour. Here we go.
Well, this will have to be weekly. We'll syndicate
Yes.
it and everything. um, for me, I was raised in a Methodist church. That was my cradle faith, and I have such good, fond memories of that. I never remember, hearing much about sexuality. I did go to a Baptist college that sort of inclined me into one direction of thinking, but I came out of college, sort of leaning the other way and thinking, I don't know that, being gay is necessarily sinful, but I feel like my, the formative conversations I had in college sent me in that direction. And so I was asking all these questions and studying scripture. Were there particular scriptures that were meaningful to you in that process, or maybe meaningful to your mom, or particular books that you know of?
Um, well,
And
this
that's
is
like,
this
it's
is
not
going to be a really common. This is going to be a really basic Christian answer.
okay.
Um,
We take those too.
honestly, I mean, John 3:16 helped me. For God so loved the world.
Hmm.
It didn't say for God so loved straight people.
Hmm.
For
Hmm.
God so loved Republicans. For God so loved, QAnon folks. Or God so loved Baptists. God so loved white people. God
Right.
loved the world. So that was all inclusive of everything.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there was, is it Romans 5:8? This is the one verse like, for God commendeth his love to us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Am I right?
That sounds right. But as a Methodist, we did not memorize a lot of scripture. You have a
Well, I
better
was I was a
way.
Baptist. We had sword drills in vacation Bible school.
I've never done that. I've heard so
You've
much.
never? Oh yeah, those were fun.
Let's bring that back, can we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Look up sword drills for those of you. Just Google sword drills, Baptist sword drills, and you'll tell you all about it.
There's got to be YouTube videos. Oh
Oh,
my
I'm sure there
gosh.
is. I'm sure there is people
Yeah.
reenacting it. Um,
Can you?
but
Oh, go ahead.
and just and then just talking to scholars and talking to biblical scholars and reading books and understanding that understanding the nature of the Bible. I mean, I just figured out a long time ago that there's probably a lot more to God
Hmm.
than what's in that book. Um, I look at the Bible as this is maybe sacrilegious, but I look at the Bible as the DMV Handbook. It's really good as a good reference to help you with things like how to do this and how to do that and what's a good example of this. But you cannot read just the DMV Handbook and know how to drive a car. You have to actually get behind the wheel and drive it
Hmm.
yourself. And being a Christian is kind of the same thing. You could know every verse backwards and forwards, but if you don't actually live the life of a Christian and try to be loving and trying to be a better person and trying to be that light for God, it doesn't matter how many verses you know.
I love that analogy.
That, and I've used that for a while. I mean, I felt that for a long
Yeah.
time. And and it's hard. It is very hard. I mean, a lot of times, especially when you have a sense that God has a calling for you,
Hmm.
there are some days that you want to just go to work and have a simple life and not do anything. You don't want to do anything. But every time I always tried to force my will onto something, like, no, I'm going to do this activity. No, I'm going to date this person. No, I'm going to go here and do this. If it wasn't right, something would always happen. And I would always feel like God would be like, no, that's not for you.
Hmm.
Hold on.
That
Just hold on. Something better is coming, but this is not for you.
that's to some
And it's
degree.
frustrating.
Yeah. That's to some degree the story of Jonah. God says, "Go to Nineveh and share this prophetic word." And Jonah literally goes in the opposite direction. He gets on a boat and sails in the direction of Spain. Of course, there's a shipwreck and he gets eaten by
Of
a
course.
big fish. And then he kind of sulks into like Nineveh, and he's like, okay, his sermon is 8 words long in Hebrew, and they all repent. And then he goes and sulks under a bush. And he's like, I knew you were going to do this, God. I knew they were going to repent, and you apparently love everyone, but I wish they didn't. I mean, it's so funny.
What people don't understand is that we hold our forefathers up in such high regard. We hold these people in the Bible up to such high regard, like they were perfect. But if you look at the stories, there's a lot of there's a lot of people on the spectrum. There's a lot of
Yeah.
sinful people in the Bible, and so this whole notion that we have to be perfect to worship God, and I've even heard people say that I don't want to worship God unless I'm worthy of it. I'm like,
Hmm.
nobody's gonna, then you're gonna be waiting forever, honey, because nobody is worthy of it. That's the point of him dying. If we could do it ourselves, he wouldn't have had to die. He
Right.
died
Oh,
for
that's
us
such a good.
because he
Yeah.
knew we could
Why
not do
would
it.
Jesus have come?
Why? Okay, I guess I could have had a V8. I could have stayed up in heaven. And why do they have to come? These people, they could do it themselves. No, we couldn't.
The sermon this past week was, and the scripture reading was on, it was the first glimpse of Paul in Acts. It's the very end of chapter 7, where he supervises the stoning of Stephen. And Paul is, one of the titans of faith. He's a saint, and but this was his sort of like villainous intro as he's supervising this awful, terrible, tragic murder.
Hmm.
And he goes on to plant churches all over the Mediterranean, and he gets in conflict with them. Like he doesn't meet Jesus and then suddenly become perfect. He's still a little prideful, and maybe should hold his tongue a little bit more, but he does great things. He's never perfect, but anyways.
I mean, I'm always going to struggle with feeling like I mean, I know I'm like, yeah, I realize I have some gifts and that I'm trying to, use them for God, but I don't think that I am the Messiah. I am definitely not the end all be all. Um, I certainly would not want to ever be the poster child for this is what being a Christian man is supposed to be. Cause I'm like, people say, "Oh, Michael," I've had a few people say that I wish I had your life. I'm like, no, 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 no,
Mm,
you don't want my life. No. Yes, I have a lot of wonderful things about it, but there's a lot of pain in that
yeah,
journey. And
absolutely.
it's kind of a lot of Christians are, it's hard. It's really hard. It's a lonely road sometimes.
Mm.
Like, it's like I said, it's even lonelier because, you have so few people who are in this camp who are gay Christian. I mean, comparatively speaking,
There's not
uh,
a big overlap in that Venn
not a
diagram.
lot. Not,
Yeah.
not if you look at it. No, and you have some people who are like, there's some people who have been so burned by the church that they will absolutely refuse to go anywhere that has anything to do with the church. They, even if it's non-denominational, they won't go anywhere near it. And then you
Mhm.
have some Christians that, oh, you're gay, I want nothing to do with you. So it is. I mean, it took me a while to find you guys. I never thought I would set foot in the Baptist church again. Honestly, I
Mhm.
never thought I would. I tried all these other churches, but like this one didn't speak to me. This one didn't speak to me. This one, yeah, this had this was good, but then they became anti-gay and they started talking about this, or it felt fake.
Hmm.
It
Mhm.
felt ungenuine. That's why, I don't like, I'm never going to say, "Oh, I'm on fire for Jesus." Yay. I mean, it's fake.
Right. Yeah. Authenticity is, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I think we should all be cultivating. Tell me
I've always
what.
been worried about people that will parade their faith or like a big banner for waving in people's faces all the time. Because for in my worldview, the way my experience has always taught me, if someone's doing that, it's because there's something they're trying to hide from other people.
Mm, mhm.
So best to just be kind, be humble.
And we have plenty of examples of folks in the news. I don't want to name names, but Jerry Falwell Jr.
Jerry
comes to
Falwell
mind.
Jr.
I mean,
We have
someone.
quite a few. Jim Baker back in the day, Oral
Yeah,
Roberts. I mean, we have a whole slew of people.
yeah, yeah. Why church? You said earlier that you experience God or sense God's presence in all these other places. And this is a question that I'm a pastor and I still wonder this sometimes too. Why is church important to you? Or why is the community of faith important to you?
Because I think all of us are searching for a place where we belong.
Hmm.
Everybody, no matter who you are,
Hmm.
where you are, you want a place where you feel that you feel connected to people, where you feel accepted, where you feel loved, where you feel like you can be your authentic self,
Hmm.
and where you can just be yourself and be welcome. My mother for years was always telling me, because I figured, what, I'm just going to be a spiritual alone practitioner of Christianity, my own little hybrid. I'll just worship with
Right.
God by myself. I
Right.
won't talk to anybody. It'll just be me and God and nobody else because other people will screw it up, you know. But my mom was really adamant about me finding a church community because she
Hmm.
said, you're not going to have kids. You're not going to have that support system to look after you when you're older, whereas a church community would look
Hmm.
after you. So I really hope that one day you find a church, but I don't want it to be that one-sided. I mean, I said I don't want to. Yes, I want to be in a place where I feel connected and where I feel like I belong, but I also want to be in a place where I feel like I could do something,
Hmm.
where I could make a difference on some level, like I have a gift to give. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to just be here and take from the church. I want to give.
Right. Absolutely.
And so if that is just, doing this podcast, or talking to other members and just saying hi to somebody, or I've missed you, or, participating on, whenever you have the nights where you help out with the homeless shelter, or even doing my artwork and teaching a class with the members, and just being a light and just helping out, doing singing with the choir, just all these little things,
Hmm.
just being like me, feeling like I make a difference in this community.
Well, I feel like church is at its best when it equips the everyday saints to live into their sense of calling in the world. We don't want to just kind of like sap everyone for all their worth and suck them
Right.
dry, but we want, my hope is that our church in particular, but all churches would be places where you come and worship and are fed, or nourished spiritually, but then you are equipped and empowered to go out and, like you said, shine your light in the world.
Yeah. But also I want to be challenged,
Right.
because I know that I don't know everything.
Hmm.
And it feels like I'm constantly learning things that I feel like I should have learned a long time ago. Like I found myself because of you and these classes that we've been taking about being more open to forgiving people
Hmm.
that I swore I would never forgive, or
Hmm.
that I'll forgive them quietly, but I won't actually tell them that I've forgiven them. Uh, but I felt like it, but I felt the calling with a few people to be like, I walked away from these people because they did something that, in my view, betrayed me. But I felt, that's in the past. Let us
Hmm.
move forward. At least let's heal. Let's at least reach out to them, let them know that they are loved. I'm sorry I didn't talk to you for so long. I was in an angry place. Forgive me.
Hmm.
I love you. And it healed it. And I felt, apparently, and unbeknownst to me, and this did happen this week
Oh.
with a friend. This happened. And I reached out to her and I told her I loved her. And I felt, but what I didn't realize was that I had this invisible weight on me that I didn't know I had,
Hmm.
because I felt so much lighter after I told her that I had forgiven her. And I said, forgive me for being so angry and for not talking to you. That I shouldn't have done that, but I felt lighter. But yeah, I had this invisible weight
Hmm.
on me. All of a sudden, I felt less bitter. I felt less angry. I felt less cynical. And I just felt I could breathe so much easier because I had let go of that. And so I'm always trying to encourage people, if you're angry at somebody, just please forgive them. And, because
Hmm.
what happens if that friend that you had for so long died tomorrow and you didn't get a chance to make it right? Or you have a bad relationship with your parents and you don't talk to them. I'm really like, please mend that. While they're alive, there's still time.
Hmm.
Don't pass it up. Um, Everything we have is a gift from God,
Yeah.
and we need to treat it as a gift, because not all gifts last forever. And yeah, so yeah, but I've been growing, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be this. Not I don't want to. It's like these people that voted this certain way and are supportive of all this violence, and these people who are killing black people in the street. I don't want to love them. Darn
Yeah.
you! Why are you making me like them? It's hard.
You know, I
It is a struggle.
I find myself stretching and growing too, and honestly, I'm appreciate you framing it in terms of growth and challenge right now, because I feel like I'm struggling to find this balance between trying to be a peacemaker and bridge builder, but also, I feel like part of my role is to speak prophetic words. And how do I speak prophetic words that everyone can hear and not just, I could say certain things from the pulpit that would just immediately turn off one half of the United States or the other half of the United States because it's just so partisan and politicized. And so, um,
Yeah,
I've looked at that as a challenge, but now the way you're talking is making me think, oh, maybe this is a way to that I'm growing right now.
because it's a struggle. Like
Yeah.
like with this verdict that may come down,
Right.
there's a part of me that feels like if it goes a certain way, there's a part of me that honestly, I will be cheering for destruction. I will send you matches. I will gladly participate in that because I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But I also realize that that's not the way to do it.
Hmm.
That is not the way God wants us to be. Uh, but how do you walk that line between, it feels like you're being a pacifist and you're not doing anything versus you are trying to be the spreader of light in the world and you're trying to heal people. I mean, I recognize that you have to heal yourself before you can't really heal anybody else. You can just give them the light and create the space for which they can heal themselves, hopefully.
Hmm.
uh but how do you get involved and make a difference and stand up for what is right, and at the same time stand down and try to be a peacemaker and not it's how do you do that? I'm struggling with that
Me too,
because
to be honest.
there are times that I want to just lash out and vent my anger on my Facebook page, but I also recognize that this is not my role, because I
Right.
have so many people that have reached out to me and have said to me that I love your posts. I find them spiritually uplifting. They make me smile. They make me
Mm.
happy. So I'm like, okay, that's the way I'm going to go. So if I make a post on my Facebook page, it has to fall within that perimeter.
Hmm.
But then there were some times where I'm like, oh, I can't. I have to say something. And it's a struggle. It is a struggle.
I'm right there with
And
you.
I know all of us are struggling with this.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and honestly, that Sunday morning group that we've been a part of has been so helpful for me. Reading through Michael Curry's book and
Oh,
some,
absolutely.
some,
Absolutely. His book helped me, has
yeah,
helped me tremendously.
and some other books that I know that are out there. And I think part of the challenge, especially for us as white people, is to listen. And recognize that we don't have all the answers, but it's important
Yeah.
to us to keep our ears and our hearts open. And I think, one thing that I also believe is that maybe we're not all called to respond in the same way. Like
Yeah.
maybe one person is called to rail on social media, and one person is called to march in the streets, or one person is called to, give physical demonstration to the pain and suffering that systemic racism continues to cause in
Yeah.
people's lives.
But
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and maybe my role as pastor is to try to put words, shape words in a way that more people can hear and more hearts can be softened. I don't know. I want to be part of the solution, but it's hard to figure it out some days.
It is hard, but one thing I do know that I can do is be a vocal supporter and is show my love for my black friends.
Hmm.
Um I have many black friends,
Hmm.
coworkers, people I performed on the stage with,
Hmm.
people that I just encountered, people that I just know in my life, and I try to let them know, hey, I'm so sorry that this is happening, and I'm on behalf of all white people, I am so sorry that we have done this, but just know that I love you. I am here for you, and if it came down to it, I will march next to you.
Hmm.
I will bail you out of jail, or I will go to jail with you.
Yeah, right.
And if anybody tries to shoot at you, I will take a bullet for you.
Mhm.
I have most of my friends, like I would do that. I
Yeah.
would lay down my life for
Hmm.
most of my friends. I think
Most
most
we
of my
won't ask you to
friends.
name names on the
I'm not gonna name
podcast.
names, but
Yeah.
just try to show love, and just try to show love to everybody that is in your life, regardless of their color or status. And it's even hard because I have friends who are on the other end of the political spectrum from me,
Right. Yeah, me
and I
too.
have to somehow figure out, I love them and I know they love me, you know, and that's the hard part, is that, I don't think any of us ever wanted this to be as politicized as it has become.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Because if you
do. Yeah,
because
go ahead.
if you hear both sides talking, they're all afraid of the same thing. They're all afraid for this country. They're afraid of losing their freedoms, and they're afraid that we're all politicized and we're all being ripped apart. They are all of the everybody is expressing that on both sides.
Yeah.
But we haven't taken the time to literally and figuratively put down the guns, take a breather, and be like, okay, we all obviously are afraid of the same thing. How do we fix this? We can
Hmm.
fix this.
And we might not all agree at the end of the day, but probably you have some good ideas and I have some good ideas. And maybe if we listen honestly, maybe we can figure out which of your ideas are the best and which are my ideas are the best. I don't know.
Well, one thing I've heard from a lot of artists who about, as far as doing your work is, just keep doing it.
Hmm.
Just keep doing it. Keep, and as far as being a person of faith, keep having the faith, keep the faith, keep, and even the Bible tells us to keep going as if, don't stop. Don't stop to look and see when Jesus is coming. Don't stop to
Yeah.
pause. You just keep going. You
Run your
keep
race.
going. Because my mother, when they first moved out to Stewart's Draft, my mom was in a very religious conservative area, and she was studying the book of Revelations for 6 months. So it got to a point where she was literally packing her bags almost for the rapture.
Wow.
And I had to be like, Mom, this is God's coming any day. Jesus is coming any day. I'm like, well, you know what? We're not supposed to sit here and wait for it. We're supposed to keep doing. I said, you know what? Yeah, the world may be a mess and the times may be right, but we still need to work actively to make this a better place. This is It is our responsibility as children of God to take care of this creation, not just the people on this earth, but this earth. We have to make this a better place.
Yeah.
So let's keep going. The rapture will happen when it happens, but don't sit there waiting for it.
Right.
Just keep going. And so we have to keep putting out the light and shining the light. Even though we can't see a ship out there, there is a ship looking for the light. We have to keep putting it out there. And that's where the church community comes in, is that sometimes we need that light to be refreshed. We
Hmm.
need to we have to add kindling to the fire to make it bright again. That's where the church comes in. We all have to stoke each other's fires, and we have to keep each other inspired and love each other and love our friends and our family and our families and our loved ones, and just be kind and just breathe when you have to. Because if all of us do it, that will give us some of us can then take a break and sit back and take a day off every once in a while, and then we can get back into the race again. But that's kind of how we have to do it, is just keep putting the light out there, and because the minute you say, oh, no one's coming, then you turn the light off and the ship crashes on the rocks and then they die.
Right. I love that image. I think we are gonna have to record a part two because I have so many more questions I want to ask
I
you.
know.
This seems like a good place to hit pause at least. Shine
Yeah.
your light. And I'm reminded of the Gospel of John, the opening, where the author says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it."
Yeah.
Michael, your light is shining so brightly. As your pastor, it's so easy for me to see, and I have no doubt that it's so easy for other people to see too. We're
Thank
so
you.
grateful for you and your witness and your testimony among us.
Thank you.
And this has been such a great conversation. I have
I very
only,
much enjoyed it.
yeah, I mean, and I'm so grateful for your willingness to be vulnerable and share, and not just with me, but publicly, or at least via podcast or whatever. So we'll
Well,
go ahead.
I've always believed that if anything I do with my life, um, I said this at my mother's funeral. There was a quote
Hmm.
by Ralph Waldo Emerson. The last part of it was, to know that one life is breathed easier because you lived.
Hmm.
That is the meaning of success. And that has always stuck with me, that I try to, no matter what happens with me, if there are other people that can come after me who have it a little easier because of
Hmm.
whatever I've done,
Hmm.
then it's all been worth it.
A good word. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
My
Yeah,
pleasure. Thank you.
this has been so good. For folks that are listening in, we're so grateful that you've listened all the way to the end. If you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere, We're so grateful that you've watched too. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and we'll look forward to being in touch sometime soon. Take care, Michael. We'll talk to
You
you.
too, Art. Thank you. And God bless you all, everyone.
Bye.